Now I'm admitting all of the public, and then I've just got to go through and make sure that everybody's off camera so that I can Can I ask all visitors to go off camera, please, off video, so that I can have the board members on the screen?
I'm not on camera, I don't think.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I believe that, okay, who is talking? Are all visitors muted and off video?
How about your phone one, Linda? I don't think whoever's phoned in isn't muted.
Yeah, I'm looking for the phone one. Yeah, so because they're on a phone, I guess.
Okay.
So I just need the person who's on the phone who's called in. Please do not speak because we will hear you.
Are we good to go then?
Otherwise, I'll have to remove. There's just two more that. Okay, I think we are. So this may, because we have so many people in, Mr. Chair, it may affect some of the audio, the quality. But let's go and
Okay.
we'll see what happens.
We'll welcome everyone here tonight, and we'll call our meeting to order, and we'll begin with our land acknowledgement statement. The Ganaraska Conservation Authority respectfully acknowledges that the lands on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas and the Chippewas of the Anishinaabeg, known today as the Williams Treaty First Nations. Our work on these lands acknowledges their resilience and their long-standing contribution to the area. We are thankful for the opportunity to live, learn, and share with mutual respect and appreciation. And I'll ask the board, is there anyone here has any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Anyone? I see none. We'll go on to the minutes of the September 15th meeting. They've been attached. Can I have a mover to approve those minutes, please? Vicky, second by Jeff. Anything from those minutes? All in favor? And that's carried. And can I have a mover for the adoption of tonight's agenda, please? Greg, seconded by Tracy. All in favor? And that's carried. So we'll begin with our delegations. First up will be the Ganaraska Members Action Group, represented by Judith Blakely and David Miller. So I'll let you turn over to you, Linda, to have them come forward. And
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've just got to unmute. I'm asking all guests if you could please close off your videos. And okay, so David.
I see David.
Yeah, is David on?
Yes, he's
Video?
He's on video, yes.
Okay.
He's waving at you.
And okay. I'm looking at the side. I'm looking for Judith now. So
Judith.
okay, and Judith is on.
Yep.
And I've got to unmute them. So and David.
Thanks,
You
Linda.
should, David and Judith, you should be able to unmute yourselves now.
Yep.
Permissions.
Thanks, Linda.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I think everyone's sick. Yep, everyone seems to be.
Great. Linda, are you okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely. You have, I've installed that.
Hand it over. Brilliant. Thank you. Everyone can see that?
No, we can't.
Oh, okay.
Double checking. Yeah, you should be able to share.
Mhm. I'm not sure where that left. 2 seconds. There we go.
Okay,
Better?
Yep.
better.
You would get there eventually. All right. Okay. And I just need to move this out of the way. All right. Still with me.
You're on.
Great stuff. Good evening. Thank you to the GRCA board and the GRCA staff for providing us the opportunity to present to you this evening. I hope it'll be informative and provide an opportunity for further discussion. My name is Judith Blakely. I'm a local resident, a Ganaraska forest member, and a horse rider. And Dave?
I'm Dave Millier. I'm the past president of the Ontario Federation of Trail Riders, the past chairperson for the Motorcyclist Confederation of Canada. I'm a past board member with the Ontario Trails Council. I recently retired from the National Off-Highway Vehicle Conservation Council in the United States. And I'm also the retired lead trail steward for Simcoe County. So I ran all of the trail stewards in the Simcoe County area.
Thanks, Dave. We're here representing the Ganaraska Members Action Group, which was formed in reaction to the announcement of the reopening of the Ganaraska Forest on September 30th. The reopening saw the Central Forest remain closed, the East Forest fractionally opened, and a very small portion of the West Forest reopened. The Facebook group has brought together all users and given voice to both disappointment and concerns regarding the Ganaraska Forest reopening. The Facebook group was formed on October 2nd and has grown to almost 700 members. We launched a petition on October 3rd to get support for our concerns, and that number has now reached 1,473 signatures. I have a feeling the board has never encountered this much interest in their meetings. Why would they? Up until now, the forest has just existed, and although people might have had complaints in the past and voiced them to the GRCA, they were not often escalated to the board. I asked the members of the board to really think about the forest now. If you sit on the board and you don't regularly use the forest, you really owe it to the users and to your community to learn more about it. I encourage you to push to find out more information from both the GRCA and the user groups. As users, we understood when the forest had to be closed immediately after the storm. We knew that the damage was significant and that the recovery efforts would take some time. However, the length of time the forest has been closed has been frustrating. But now, with the small reopening effort and what we have learned about future plans, it's no longer disappointing, it's devastating. The GRCA has said that 600 acres was impacted by the storm. However, the Ganaraska forest has hundreds of kilometers of trails spread across 11,000 acres. And that means only a fraction of those trails are affected. The time taken to assess and take action has been extraordinarily long. The GRCA was communicating that the forest would reopen September 30th. However, 80% of the forest remains closed, with no clear plan of how the remainder will open. The GRCA seemed unable to get outside help from other agencies and would not accept any help from volunteer groups or even local businesses. They did, however, receive a grant from the Greenbelt Ontario to assist with the cleanup, but it's unclear how this money's been spent. The priority appears to have been salvaging timber by logging. There appears to have been little to no effort made to actually clear the trails and make them usable. Lastly, while the forest was closed, a pause was placed on membership, but that membership restarted September 30th, even though many members still do not have access to the forest and many only have limited access. The Operations Recovery Plan. Our group has been sent a copy of a plan created in August this year by the GRCA, and it outlines plans to permanently close areas of the forest and restrict access to others. Although this plan does not appear to have been approved by the board, the closures have already started. The plan limits accessibility for users and reduces greatly the areas that we can use. In many cases, the rationale provided for closure is improper road crossing. This is something that could be solved with the help of user groups and local businesses that rely on those crossings for access. In fact, by implementing many of the measures, the GRCA is actually increasing risk by creating bottlenecks and reducing access points, making it harder to reach an injured user or respond to other emergencies. The GRCA has a focus on flooding, watershed, and erosion. Compaction is highlighted as a concern, but in fact, the main forces causing compaction in forest soils come from machinery used for logging. Any areas of risk for erosion could be cordoned off for use and allow regeneration. And working with the user groups, they could identify alternate trails and routes that would accommodate that. In terms of limiting invasive species, I will tell you the Ganaraska forest is full of dog strangling vine, but so is every other property in the area. In fact, the trail network provides forest breaks, which would help combat invasive species and potentially forest fires. These items were not really raised as significant concerns in the 2018 Forest Management Plan, so it seems strange that they've become major concerns in this ORP document. I'm not sure if the board is aware of the frustration and dismay that's prevalent in the user community. The communication throughout the summer from the GRCA was weak. They never outlined timelines or deliverables, and there's certainly a lack of transparency. In the 2018 Forest Management Plan and the public meetings that led up to that plan, there was much discussion about the users and volunteers being more involved in decision-making, trail maintenance, and other aspects. But this has diminished before the storm and has completely disappeared since. Many of the people who have sat on the Ganaraska Recreational User Committee have said the committee was used as a way to indicate consultation. However, in practice, their concerns and suggestions were ignored. It is clear that the communication between the GRCA and the user and member community has broken down. We need to work together and through transparency and collaboration, build back trust and respect. The GRCA has many times over the summer and the 5 months of closure pointed to the lack of resources. It is often the users and members that bring issues in the forest to light. And over the past 40 years, they have created trails and maintained trails, including providing much needed signage. The user groups have a wealth of knowledge. They know how their users use the trails, and they educate their users on safety and etiquette. More than that, these are large groups of very knowledgeable and skilled individuals that the GRCA has access to. When the GRCA had volunteers as patrollers, they took their role really seriously, and they looked as being more ambassadors of the forest. Most of the time, they were helping people find their way, or they were educating people on the benefits of actually being a member. Local businesses have benefited from having the Ganaraska on their doorstep. The lure of the forest provides a ripple effect to businesses and communities around it. I know for a fact that those who stay at the Ganaraska visit businesses in Millbrook, Peterborough, Newcastle, and Bowmanville. Without this traffic caused by users in the forest, those businesses will be impacted. Is there a way forward? I certainly hope so. I am not alone. There are many businesses and landowners who have invested in this area based on access and availability of the trails in the Ganaraska. Many rely on continued use for substantial parts of their income. I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
Thank you very much, Judith. I just had 4 quick comments I wanted to make. The first one that I guess we would look at is, you have the existing recreational user committee. We believe it could be used far more effectively to actually assist the GRCA. We would also like to explore the possibility of having 1 or more of the open board positions be filled by members of the user community to allow for more fulsome discussions and to better connect the board with the users. There are existing land use agreements, for example, with the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs. We think this is an ideal time to look to implement more land use agreements, take advantage of the wealth of knowledge, the legion of volunteers, as well as the financial support the organized user groups can bring to the forest. The ORP, for example, calls out the challenge of creating and managing some of the trails in the forest, saying it's almost impossible in some cases for them to deal with them based on current resources. Why not leverage the skills and expertise, not to mention the financial assistance that's available from the various user groups? Third, there's still trail cleanup to be done. All user groups have offered to provide volunteers, as Judith mentioned. Let's explore ways that this can be done safely and with no additional liability to the GRCA. The organized user groups do have insurance for their members as well as for their volunteers. And then finally, based on what we see working successfully in numerous other managed forests across Ontario and beyond, Simcoe County as an example where, as I said, we've had very successful relationships, Limerick Forest, Somerville Forest, many others where we have multiple groups of users all working together from the various user groups. We believe that things, eliminating the patrollers group wasn't necessarily the best solution if we could bring the patrollers back, but have them combined with the security team that you're using now, the security company that comes in and does the enforcement. A combination of education and enforcement is far better received by the user community than strictly by using enforcement itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Do you have questions for us? Or?
Well, thank you both for presenting. And yeah, I'll turn it over to the board members now. We need to get back to the regular screen though, so I can see them. That's all.
Sure.
And board members, do you have questions for the presenters? I do know a lot of some of the points that have been brought forward will be discussed within the staff reports that are going to come forward afterwards. So these are questions, if you just direct them to the presenters, it would be much appreciated. So is there any questions for the presenters themselves? Joe, yes? You're on mute, Joe. Joe, you're still muted?
I've asked him to unmute. I've clicked on it so he can unmute.
Linda, you should be able to unmute him if you can't. So.
Yeah, he's unmuted now.
Okay, go ahead, Joe. Still can't hear you. Am I the only one that can't hear him? But I can't hear him.
No, I can't hear him, but he shouldn't be muted.
No, he doesn't show mute.
Is your microphone working, Joe, on your computer?
Did you turn your volume on your mic on, Joe?
You are not showing.
We'll let you see if you can figure it out, Joe, on your computer, and I'll see if anyone else has questions while you're doing that, okay?
Yeah, you're not showing here as being muted, or so it's got to be on your microphone's end.
Yeah. You could type the question into the chat if he wants to.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe. I don't know what you're saying.
Is there anyone else with questions? Maybe while Joe sees if he can get his computer volume working and so forth. Anyone else from the board with questions? No, don't see any. So no, still can't hear you, Joe, at all. So
if you go to your microphone, like to over on the far bottom left, Joe, and there's an arrow there and it says select microphone, you might be able to adjust your microphone there. It's got select microphone and then it's got select speaker. So the far left hand, right where the little microphone is, And if you click on the chevron, I guess it's pointing up. It should give you a selection of, it may say same system, it may say same as computer. You can type it into, oh, I thought that was him. You can type it into chat as well if you wanted, Joe. Sorry, that's the only, I don't know why your microphone's not working. It's not at this end.
Well, we'll give it another minute and
We better respect your time as well. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
well, we appreciate you both coming here
Um,
and both presenting.
Thank you very much for having us. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. And hopefully what we're trying to share with you resonates and we can see some positive outcomes.
Great. Well, thank you very
More
much.
discussion.
Oh, here's Joe here. He's got a, it says
Does he
my-
have,
oh, he said something, but it's disappeared.
He just says that the host is
The
not
host
allowing
not
him to
allowing
unmute
participant.
himself. So he's getting that same error that we had before you.
yeah, but
you
I'm
opened
not
up
showing,
window.
I'm not showing that, I did ask him, see, I'm, so
Yeah.
I'm, now it's saying unmute again. So now I'm asking him to unmute because he's muted again.
Right. He has to hit the button. Once you do that, he has to
Yeah.
choose to unmute at that point. Yes.
Yeah, so you, Joe, you have to hit there, you should be unmuted. Because your microphone is now not showing.
Are you able to type your question, Joe, or do you want us to move on?
Do you want to log out, Joe, and I'll let you back in and see? Okay, just wait till he logs back in. He's
Well,
gone.
we're here for you. So
Yep. If you can just hang on for a minute, we'll see if we can get Joe to come back.
And
ironically,
then I'll
I'm
have
sitting,
to ask him to,
For Judith and Dave.
Oh,
yeah, I'm
there we
sitting
go.
close to your, I'm sitting at the en route in Port Hope, just outside of Port Hope right now. So
He's on the wrong route.
okay, he's in the waiting room. Okay, I'm going to admit him, but now I've got to put him on. Just a minute now, I've got to go here and find Joe. I got to close the chat.
Oh, here he comes.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to ask him to unmute. Just a minute. Okay, Joe, I'm asking you to unmute. And you should be able to unmute. So
does he want to type his question? Just type it into the chat where he's
Yeah.
typing the message.
Yeah. We're happy to answer.
They just called it by now.
Any luck here?
I've asked him to unmute and I don't understand what's like, that should be. Okay, so he's asked, Mr. Chair, he's
Yeah.
asked a question saying, is the same trees which look fairly small still blocking the trail?
Okay, that's more of a staff question. So we'll,
I don't think we're in a position to answer that, unfortunately, because we haven't been able to inspect the damage.
Yeah, we haven't.
we'll save that question, Joe, for the staff when they do their report, if you don't mind. Okay, so we'll move on to our next delegation, and that is
Thank you.
Peter Swinton.
Yeah, I just got to, there's Peter right there.
Okay, Peter Swinton, he wished to speak to the board on the partial reopening from the September 30th, and he'd also like to speak to extension of the memberships. There's Peter.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah. So it worked with Peter. I asked him to unmute and he unmuted.
Okay, welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board. I've been a member since 2016. I purchased my motorized pass in October 2021, and that pass, the most expensive pass, gives right to all uses allowed within the entire forest except for cross-country skiing. And according to the website, the GRCA website, that was 4,520 hectares of managed forest and approximately 680 kilometers of trails, ranging from forest road to single track. On September 30th, when the forest reopened, my pass got extended to October 2023, but now it only buys me access to 45 kilometers of trail, 35 which are motorized and none of which are single track. Single track is why us dirt biker riders are here. To not open the single track is like selling an all access Canada's Wonderland season pass and then opening the park without operating any of the rides. I understand that it will take time to get everything open, but until it is, the clock should not start ticking on the passes that we paid for, because we are not getting the service, the facilities that we paid for. So the question then comes down to what's being done to get everything open. In your September 15th press release, it said the blowdown impacted 250 hectares. So why then haven't 4,270 hectares been opened for full use? In October 7th on Facebook, you say, single track has been closed due to safety concerns. The GRCA is working with our partners to improve upon and build a sustainable trail system for the future. But in the August 2022 Operation Recovery Plan, it states that single track for any use are currently challenging and near impossible for the GRCA to create and manage. Single track trails will be facilitated, maintained through partnerships, or created, restored in ways that the GRCA staff can manage the trail type. So who are the partners who are being brought in to restore and manage the forest network of single track trails? And what is the time frame for their opening? I'm also a member of OFTR. I'm not on the board. I'm not on any committee, but I've spoken with them and I understand that prior to COVID, negotiations with the GRCA ended due to liability and insurance issues that have been easily addressed with regional municipalities and conservation authorities throughout the province. And from what I understand, OFTR and its affiliated clubs have not been allowed back in to assist in the recovery operations. Not only does it appear that no partners are being brought in to help restore the single track, it also, the GRCA does not appear to intend to open everything up. And if I could share my screen now, I've actually gone and looked at the operations recovery plan and mapped what the tables say it appears are not intended to open up. So I'm just going to go share the screen now. So can everybody see my, oh, sorry, let me just, it's bouncing around to things. So this is the East Forest. The area in purple are marked as, in the report, as either passive / closed, and the areas in red are shown as closed. So a significant portion of the East Forest is being restricted from motorized use that was previously allowed. And also the report states that people under 16 or people without a G1 or M1 license are also not allowed to use it. So that basically kids are not allowed in the East Forest anymore riding. If we go to the Central Forest, there are two small areas that appear to have been closed off. And if we go to the West Forest, a significant area is closed. All of the areas in red are being shown as closed. And this is from my mapping. And this area in purple is shown in the report as passive enclosed, but also appears to be shown enclosed. Because when you look at the map that the forests, that the GRCA website shows of what's open, you can see that all of those areas now no longer are part of the GFC recreational boundary. So it appears that for some reason, the GRCA is now not looking to open a significant amount of forest land. So one of the reasons stated in the report was that proper road crossings, and I'm quoting from the August report, proper road crossings would need to be created to allow access to other Ganaraska forest trails. Age of road users cause restrictions for driving or crossing municipal rights of way. Operators must be 16 years of age and hold a valid G1, M1 or greater. The trails leading from P6 south on the east side is on a municipal right of way. And this is used to justify the closing of P6, the largest parking lot in the West Forest, and all the lands north of Boundary Road. The same justification is being used to significantly reduce the East Forest and not allow those under 16 to ride, as I've just shown. Now, the reasoning for this is dubious at best. Provincial legislation has long allowed off-road vehicle use on public lands, providing the vehicles are green plated and have liability insurance. No age license restriction is applied to the user so long as a child under 12 is under the close supervision of an adult. Green plated off-road vehicles are allowed to directly cross public highways to connect trails on either side. Green plated ATVs and more recently motorcycles, off-road motorcycles, are allowed to travel along a public highway at reduced speeds if permitted by bylaw by the municipality operating the highway. And also off-road vehicles, including motorcycles, are permitted to be driven on highways on Crown land, lands within provincial parks and conservation reserves. Now, municipalities throughout Ontario have passed these bylaws for highways that have active traffic up to 80 kilometers an hour on paved roads with no issues. The only reason that I can fathom why they haven't been passed on unmaintained road allowances and minor rural roads within the Ganaraska forest area, which have up to now been used primarily by Ganaraska pass holders, is because the GRCA hasn't applied and would prefer to use this limited interpretation of the legislation as an excuse to close off lands. And that closure doesn't just affect motorized users. That closure of land affects hikers, mountain bikers, uses for which horse riders, that no bylaw is required for operation on the municipal right of way. From what I can see, the land use restrictions have nothing to do with the windstorm and everything to do with limiting public access to the use of the forest. As well as closing off lands adjacent to public access point, the report refers to gates, staffed gatehouses, and even fencing off the West Forest. And in the text report that I submitted, all of the page references for these references are noted. The net result is to turn Ganaraska Forest into an enclosed private enclave. This is clearly inappropriate for public lands managed by a taxpayer and user-funded body and overseen by a board of elected officials representing 10 municipalities. So I'd like to quote from the 2017 Ganaraska Forest Management Plan that is meant to guide the forest management from 2018 to 2038. And this is from section 5.7. The Ganaraska Forest Management Plan will support access to Ganaraska Forest, recognizing the value of Ganaraska Forest from a human health, wellness, and active living perspective. Roads and trail closures will only be implemented when and if there are public safety concerns between harvesting operation and users. Other trail closures will only occur when ecological attributes of the forest are being significantly impacted by continued use. So clearly, these closures proposed in the August Operation Recovery Plan are not in keeping with the objectives set out in the Ganaraska Forest Master Plan. So I'm going to just bring up my recommendations. Firstly, that the operational recovery plan be completely rescinded. The remaining 4,270 hectares and 635 kilometers of trail, which are not impacted by tree blowdowns, be immediately reopened to their previous uses. Use restrictions imposed on the East Forest be lifted. That the GRCA resume discussions with the OFTR and its affiliated clubs and other user groups in the interest of establishing true operational partnership and trail maintenance agreements. The GRCA, OFTR, and affiliated clubs and other groups begin immediate trail-by-trail assessment and surgical removal of single-track obstructions that may have occurred outside the major blowdown areas, and that as the logging clears up the blowdown areas, that the clubs and the GRCA be allowed to go back and do further cleanup related to single-track obstructions. And that the clock on membership renewals does not start until at least 85% of the single track trails are open and accessible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for your presentation.
I'm going to just release the screen sharing.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, can I have questions for Peter then, please? Does anyone from the board have questions? Okay, none at this time. So again, Peter, thank you for your presentation. Oh, sorry, Brian.
Mr. Chair, Brian.
Yeah, sorry.
Can I just ask what the process is with this? Is there going to be a discussion amongst the board members after the deputations on this matter today?
There may be. What we're going to do is, first of all, I've got questions from board members to you, Peter, and then I go from there. We're going to have a staff report, which will hopefully clear a lot of the questions that have come from yourself and the first presenters. And from there, it'll be up to the board of what they want to implement or do and so forth. So at this point, we're going to finish your presentation off, and then we'll go to staff and hear their presentation and go from there. Some of it may be more immediate than others. Some of it may have to come back to another board meeting within the next month.
Thank you.
So Brian, would you like to ask your question then, please?
Yes, thank you. And it may come up later in the staff report, but I mean, there was a lot of provincial regulations and bylaws mentioned in Mr. Swinton's report. By the way, thank you for a very thorough report there. I just wanted to make sure that staff can confirm that, the comments that are being made are accurate. Sometimes, laws and regulations are quoted, are not up to date or not accurate at this time. I'm just wondering that I want to make sure that the regulations that are quoted and bylaws, that they are all accurate and that up to date.
Okay,
So I don't know if staff's going to introduce that later, but I just wanted to make sure that got brought forward. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll save your question, Brian, for staff when we do the staff report, but by all means. Anyone else for any questions for Peter? There being none, can I have a motion to receive the two presentations and that all questions from those presentations be brought forward at the staff report, whether it be this meeting or a following meeting? Motion to do that, please. Brian, seconder Tim, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so next up, we will have presentations now from our staff, and I'm not sure who's leading off, whether it be Pam, or is it you? Yes, so we'll let Pam, we'll let you begin. And
thank you,
yeah.
Mr. Chair. I'm doing a sound check. Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm hoping I sound a little weird to myself, but if I sound clear, then I will proceed. And let me just share my screen. Okay, so can everybody see that okay? Oh, my,
No.
yeah. There we go. Okay, I see you, Mr. Chair. You can nod your head that you can see that. Okay, wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, staff, and those in the gallery. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, we're going to provide an update on the Ganaraska Forest, and it's going to be in 3 parts. I'm going to first speak to some of the planning matters that have been brought forward. And then Gus Sawyer, our forester, will speak to forestry management update. And then Ed Van Osh, our forest recreation technician, will also speak about forest trail recovery. And just so everybody's aware, I just kind of minimized the screen. So actually, I don't see any faces right now. So if somebody needs me, just let me know. So start off with the update on recovery planning. I'm going to start a little bit high level and introduce this topic under the light of the Conservation Authorities Act, of which the purpose of a conservation authority is to provide for the organization and delivery of programs and services that further the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources within a watershed jurisdiction. And additionally includes programs and services related to the conservation and management of lands that are owned by the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority, which includes the Ganaraska Forest. In order to fulfill the purpose under the Conservation Authorities Act, the authority has always written documents and plans to support the delivery of these programs and services. And many of these plans are internal and serve as a guide to support program implementation. When we speak about the Ganaraska Forest, everybody is well aware of the Ganaraska Forest Management Plan that was approved by the board in 2017. The plan was written to provide guidance and recommendations for the sustainable use and conservation of the Ganaraska Forest. The Forest Management Plan is very specific in its scope to address how the forest as a natural resource, as an ecosystem, is to be managed. The Forest Management Plan speaks to how, in its operations, recreational trails and programming is to be considered so that tools that we use, such as harvesting, are considered in how they may impact or conflict with recreational trails, for example. As part of the process to create the Forest Management Plan, in 2016, public consultation was undertaken. It involved over 1,300 individuals over many meetings and workshops and public open houses. And what was created through support of a consultant was a synopsis report, which provides excellent input on the multi-use nature and value of the Ganaraska Forest. It's contained as an appendix within the Forest Management Plan. And one of the very loud messages that came from that consultation process was that everyone involved felt that it was very important to ensure that the forest remains sustainable. The reason why people want to come and experience the forest is for the forest itself. The forest is an integral part of how we manage our watersheds, both on a local context and a regional context. Additionally, and as stated in the Forest Management Plan, it was recognized that the Forest Management Plan was not able to fully address all of the recreational opportunities and concerns that were brought forward through the public consultation process. And it was recommended that staff continue to work towards a resolution of the matters brought forward through consultation. The authority, in partnership and through its own delivery of programs and services, have always been implementing programs and services that support recreation and trail systems within the forest prior to the plan, but also after the plan. So some examples of what has occurred since the plan in support of a recreational program is trail redevelopment and improvements through partnerships. A beginner's cross-country ski trail was created very close to the forest center. We have moved towards the ability for users to purchase day passes through a kiosk at the forest center and also online. And additionally, people can purchase or renew memberships through an online platform. Most recently, we have implemented a digital real-time trail mapping platform that allows users to see the areas that are able to be accessed and the trails that are open in a moment by moment matter. And what has always been happening beyond these few highlights is the ongoing implementation to find solutions to the many opportunities and concerns that are known to exist within the Recreation Trail program and the trails themselves. I don't have to spend too much time on this slide, but to say that through all the efforts that staff have been doing and partners alike, on May 21st, things changed. A very huge storm hit the forest and was very devastating. And it caused the staff to pivot to now address this new situation that is before us. After some early assessments right after the storm, that week following, staff sat down at the table and began to plan out how we were going to recover, where we were going to start trail clearing efforts, and how we were going to proceed with managing the forest and the larger impacts that it was felt by it. But at the same time, we realized that there was going to be many ways that we could realize the opportunities and address some of the concerns that were had around the trail system at the same time with recovering from the storm. And so throughout those summer months and all the staff work and discussions that we had, this information was turned into the Ganaraska Forest Operational Recovery Plan for Recreational Trails. Again, we were seeing, we had to make an opportunity out of this storm because of how devastating it was to improve the recreational trail systems while ensuring that we were protecting the ecological integrity of the forest. So what is the Operational Recovery Plan? It is an internal guiding document for staff to implement changes to address issues and realize opportunities to create a sustainable recreation program and trail system. It will inform staff work plans. It will support our partners in their work planning and where to focus efforts. And it will support funding applications. It's really important to note that this plan will be revisited and changes to recommendations can occur. And most importantly, this plan is intended to support a multi-use recreational program that is sustainable into the future. Many are viewing this plan as almost the end of recreational potential within the forest. But I hope one will also realize that it actually is a new beginning for the possibilities to create a sustainable trail system into the future. And when I say sustainable, it's not just sustainable for what the program is, but that it is sustainable to the forest itself. When staff were sitting down with our maps, looking at the forest in a recovery effort, we were making recommendations based on informed decision-making. And some of this criteria that I've listed here, it's listed in the plan, looks at topics such as the ecology of the forest. Where are trail placement and conditions not in the best interest of the ecology of the forest? Where is trail crossings or trail interactions with municipal right-of-ways not fully formulated? It's not just a matter of putting signs across a road to tell both users of a municipal road and users of a trail that there's a crossing ahead. It is having those agreements with member municipalities to actually facilitate that to happen. Similar to how many different users of their different enjoyments of the forest are accessing the forest off of those right-of-ways. We also were looking at how trails interact with and are within proximity to private properties, and where those are concerning to our neighbors, that they would be considered in decision-making. We also wanted to make sure in our rationale that where parking infrastructure was not supported by the authority because it just wasn't in that area of the forest on authority property, again, that we were going to be able to provide access points for all users to enjoy our trail systems. especially when sometimes these access points off municipal right-of-ways may not be possible. So these were kind of some of our main criteria that made us look at the forest in a certain way. And then when we kind of found areas in the forest that we wanted to look at a bit closer, we used additional rationale categories. Some of these are somewhat repeated, but the idea was that when we looked at a forest area, then we put specific rationale to that specific area of land we were looking at. Again, not to repeat myself too much, but we wanted to ensure that some of our trails do consider the health and safety of our forest users, our volunteers, and of our staff. And in terms of trail connection, we wanted to make sure that when you looked at the trail network, that the connections made sense, and if there was unauthorized trails, that they were also recognized. I also wanted to kind of indicate too that within the plan, there's also a list of opportunities that can also be hopefully implemented that will improve the recreational trail system and program even more. And so an example of this is expanding or creating parking lots that are on authority lands. So I wanted to talk briefly about consultation. So to support the decision-making contained in this internal plan, staff did look at the previous consultation documents. The 2016 document has been talked about a lot, but also we used the 1997 Ganaraska Trail Report, which yes, is 20 plus years old now, but at the time the forest management plan consultation was occurring, those recommendations were brought forward into the consultation process, and many were still felt to be valid 20 years since. And so those consultation and recommendations were reviewed and utilized in the decision making. What is also really important to note is that the Ganaraska Conservation Authority will conduct public consultation or solicit feedback from our member municipalities, stakeholders, and the Recreational Users Committee. And when I say stakeholders, I mean everybody, forest members, users, the public at large, neighbors. And we will do this when needed to implement and refine recommendations. And so some examples of things we're already continuing to consult on is access points into the forest, including access points from the Millbrook Valley Trail System, and understanding how or what allowable uses are on municipal right-of-ways. So this is already occurring. It was occurring prior to the storm, and it was occurring during recovery efforts. The operational recovery plan is an internal document. It was provided for information to the Recreational Users Committee and was referenced in the September presentation to the GRCA Board of Directors. The operational recovery plan was not intended to be shared widely, and not because we didn't want to be transparent or we were trying to keep it a secret, but because it is an internal guidance document to support staff in ongoing implementation, and it can be and will be updated on an as-needed basis. I also want to speak about volunteer opportunities a little bit. So it's been acknowledged that over the decades, the GRCA has partnered with volunteers and partner organizations to support the recreation program. And this will and does continue to happen. Partnerships come and go, but the youth of volunteers and partners will always be used. With regards to storm recovery, volunteers and partners will also be part of the recovery efforts when the following conditions can be met. The work environment is safe, the tasks are appropriate to the skill level of the individual, appropriate personal protective equipment is used, the task is meaningful to recovery efforts, and proper training of volunteers occurs. These conditions have already been met. We have already engaged with Conservation Authority partners and Northumberland County Forest staff who were able to come and assist with all their skill levels early on in the recovery efforts. There has been discussion about, or it's been noted that many other places across the province, groups, agencies, and conservation authorities have been able to open their trail systems sooner because of the storm, which is wonderful. And I'm glad that was able to happen for other trail systems. However, their success in opening up sooner cannot be compared to the GRCA's response and recovery efforts. The way that the storm impacted the forest is unique and specific to our environment, our forest environment, and how it impacted our trail system. In particular, how other agencies and organizations utilize volunteers and how they allowed them to work in those work conditions is specific to them. A lot of references made to Calabogie as an example. And again, the authority has created these sets of conditions that must be met and holds the health and safety of all of our volunteers and our staff to a high level. So again, it is not like comparing apples to apples and the different recovery efforts across the province, but it is more like apples to oranges.
Bullshit.
I also want to talk about membership extensions. So it's been kind of discussed already in our delegations about how the authority has extended memberships based on the closure from the storm. So, and it's in bullet point, because this is how we have it described, is that Ganaraska Forest memberships, except for cross-country ski memberships, purchased between June 1st, 2021 and May 21st, 2022, will receive a 12-month extension from the original membership expiry date. In regards to cross-country ski memberships that expired during the forest closure, so between May 21st and September 30th as the reopening date, that they would receive a 6-month hiking membership. So staff have been busy processing forest membership extensions to those who fit within those categories, and the majority of those members have received their extension emails, but staff continue to work with forest members to make sure that they've received the proper documentation. Refunds on forest memberships have been provided, and the GRCA will continue to issue refunds if requested. So before I hand it over to Gus, our forester, I wanted to provide a little bit of a summary. So that the Ganaraska Conservation Authority is committed to offering a multi-use recreational opportunities within the Ganaraska Forest that will always be part of the forest. Engagement with volunteers and partners will occur to support storm recovery and ongoing trail improvements when it is appropriate. The trail system and recreational program must consider, prioritize, and protect the ecological integrity of the Ganaraska Forest. That is a huge statement within the Ganaraska Forest Management Plan. I would also like to note here that again, the ability for the Forest Management Plan to implement all of the recommendations as part of the stakeholder consultation that pertain to recreation is not the role of the actual Forest Management Plan. The recreational program and trail system must be sustainable into the future. And again, when I speak to sustainability, it's that the program and the trails themselves need to be sustainable, but those trail systems on the health of the forest must be sustainable to the forest. And staff and our contractors continue to restore trails. We are still out there cutting. And additional trail systems, where appropriate, will be opened, including those in the Central Forest. So with that, I will pause in my presentation, and hopefully, Gus, you're here.
Yep, I am.
Okay.
Thank you very
And
much, Pam. Appreciate it.
Just tell me when you want me to go to the next slide.
You can hit the next slide right now. Okay, so since we have quite a few new viewers here, I thought it would be valuable, and given our update here on how the forestry cleanup is going, to kind of go over the rationale behind a salvage operation. So when a natural disaster such as the storm that we experienced happens, the most effective method of cleaning up that mess is going through a salvage harvest. So a salvage harvest involves the hiring of mechanical equipment operators to salvage the merchantable material that has been damaged by said disaster. And the logic behind that is just hand clearing thousands upon thousands of trees is not only unfeasible, but it is quite dangerous. So if we're hiring big, huge mechanical machines to clean up this mess, it's going to cost some money to run. So what we'll often do with these salvage operations is either sell the damaged material or exchange it in return for the cleanup service itself. That makes it financially viable for the loggers as well as the landowners to get the work that needs to get done. Given the potential damage of the merchantable material, though, the goal here is often to break even. Loggers aren't exactly sure of what quality the stems are going to be in. Like the perfect example for us with our recovery is we've got some areas that have snap damage and a lot of other areas that have blowdown damage. And that can really influence the actual quality of the timber that these guys are trying to clean up for us. So like I said, kind of the goal when it comes to these salvage operations is not necessarily to make money. It's often just to break even or not really pay all too much for the service. But if you can make a little bit of money, even if it's pennies on the dollar, that's literally the best case scenario that we can help for or hope for. Next slide, please, Pam. So when it comes to our situation, a significant part of our forest is pine plantation. And when you're dealing with a salvage operation around pine, especially in the summer, it's pretty much a race against the clock. So the summer heat stains the wood in both white pine, all of our softwood species, red pine, which are everything that fills our plantations. And when it becomes too stained, it then becomes unusable at the mills. So if the wood is then unusable in the mills, the loggers don't take it, and instead it's left to rot in the bush. And when that happens, the rotting material then becomes a breeding ground for pests, which can then further impact the surrounding stands. So when it comes to the salvage operation itself, the goal is to maximize the salvage material so that we minimize the threats to the surrounding forest. And then some other benefits of having a salvage operation come in is that it also removes the debris that would hinder restoration. So that could be trail clearing, but it could also be tree planting in these big blowdown areas. Imagine trying to go in some of these blowdown patches as they are in their current state and trying to plant trees in that. And it also helps reduce the fuel load that's on the ground and thus reduces forest fire risk. Next slide, please. So our salvage operations, this is an update from our last update that we provided to the board back in September. So the one up in Boundary Road in Ganaraska, our first salvage operation, this one, as a reminder, is being done by Robinson Forest Products. Great news is that the cutting is nearly complete in this operation. I spoke with the loggers today and they're hoping to finish up cutting in this block as of Monday. And then that would just leave forwarding of the material out to the landing and then just trucking off the last of the material. So as of October 18th, we've had 84 truckloads of material come out of here. That's 40 more trucks since our last update, equating to about 5,300 tons of wood. And that is 2,400 tons more than our last update. Next slide. So our second salvage area, this one's also being done by Robinson. And as mentioned in our last meeting there, that we had postponed this area, or at least the majority of this area, until 2023. And that's just in the interest of getting Central Forest logging completed earlier and thus reopened earlier. So as these guys are finishing up at Boundary in Ganaraska, I'm going to be sending them along the trails to this area, and they're going to be cleaning up the immediate blowdown that's in this stretch and then making their way over further to the forest center, which I'll talk about after. And our third main salvage area is over by the forest center itself. And this job is being completed by Cedar Scrape Industries. Unfortunately, they have had some very serious mechanical problems with their harvesters. So progress has been quite slow on this front. And as such, I've been in communication with the logger on that one. And we have been giving some of his salvage areas actually up to some of the other contractors that are working in the area. And again, that is just with that timeline in mind of racing against the stain in our softwood products. It's trying to speed up the process of the cleanup. So from our last update, we've had 23 truckloads come out of here. So that's only 5 more truckloads since for an extra 250 tons from last one. A total of 1,100 tons have come out of there so far. And then our final salvage effort, this is dealing with all the smaller little patches that are scattered across the forest. This one's also being completed by Cedar Scrape Industries. So just like in our last salvage area. Progress has been slow on that. But you can see on my maps there, the stuff that has been scribbled out in pink, that is the area that they have already gone over and cleaned up, and will be continuing along that route, getting the smaller pockets of salvage and also hazard trees along that route. And
log,
slide, please.
logging up trail at the same time.
So some other logging updates. This is just on our general thinnings or regular scheduled thinnings front. The Ganaraska or the GAN 0122 thinning tender was awarded to Penguin Poles, who subcontracted out Robinson Forest Products, the people who are working up in Boundary and Ganaraska. So as I mentioned, they're going to be coming across Boundary Road through our salvage areas. And once they finish there, they're going to make their way over to the Ganaraska Forest area. Specifically, we're going to get them to start in the blowdown patch that's north of the horse trailer parking lot. And then from there, they're just going to continue on with everything that has been marked in that area and completing that thinning. And then in our second thinning tender, that one was awarded to Hokum and Son Limited. They've been, over the course of the summer, working their way across the forest, across the West Forest, sorry. And they have now moved into cutting their final area in the West Forest, which is over towards where Cedarscape is doing the big cleanup by the Ganaraska Forest Center. To areas 2 and 3, which is just north of Langstaff Road, they've completed cutting and forwarding out there. However, there's still lots of logs on the landing, so trucking is going to be continuing for the next couple of weeks through there. And then what I'm hoping for with the progress we've been making right now, my aim is to have the majority of logging done in time for Christmas. And that's everything salvage and our regular thinning operations. And next slide. So just to kind of show you what this all looks like, all the activity that's happening in the forest this summer, all the areas that are colored in orange are active logging operations that are going to be happening. The areas that I've striped out there in black are areas that have essentially finished or are nearly finished. And all the areas that don't have any stripes through are still the routes that need to go through. Next slide, please. So thanks to some of the rain we've had in the forecast lately, I've actually been able to get some time in the office here to figure out what we're going to do going into the future here. So the storm, it hit a lot of the areas that were scheduled for 2023 harvest. And as such, I had to do a lot of bouncing around with the harvest schedule just to try and space things out logistically. So we knew that we were going to have in 2023 now, the remainder of the second salvage area going out. That essentially split one of the tenders that I was looking to put out next year in half. And we kind of had to bounce around so that loggers weren't crawling over each other or sending trucks all over each other. So next year, if you take a look at the map there, the blue area is the rest of the second salvage area that'll be done in 2023. And then the purple area is everything else that's going to be tendered out. So we're looking at some stuff on the east side of Boundary Road. We're going to get the remainder of the stand down by the Forest Center that is currently being salvaged. So everything that wasn't damaged, we're going to go and finish that off. So it's all on the same schedule still. And then we're going to make our way across Carmel Line and then over towards what we call the hole in the wall around 10th line. And then in 2024, the area that we're looking at is the east side of or east end of Wilcox Road in the forest, and then the south end of the West Forest. So that's the area in orange. And then we're going to finish off the rest of the Boundary Road block marked in red there. Next slide. And Ed, you can take it away on trails.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'm going to give you an update on what we have been doing since the derecho storm that occurred on May 21st. Staff have been working diligently to try to reopen these trails. Some of the efforts that have been involved have been forestry contractors, which Gus just discussed. And staff have cleared all of the major trails that lead up to all the significant blowdowns that are found within the West and Central Forests.
Log instruction only.
Right.
To trail, pardon me, I just heard somebody asking a question there. I was interrupted. Okay, yeah, so staff and volunteers have cleared all forest roads which lead to the salvage area, logging areas, which I just mentioned. And now that we have all of those forest roads cleared, we are switching our efforts onto the dual track systems. And since this, we first started clearing on May 26, staff and volunteers have addressed over 800 major trail blockages and cleared approximately 100 kilometers worth of trails. 800 trail blockages is a significant amount of work. It's well beyond our yearly operating, which we would cut trees to clear trails. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So we have our health and safety here. All staff and volunteers involved in trail clearing efforts have accredited professional forestry or arboriculture training, and we all possess related work experience, and we're covered under workplace health and safety regulations. The hazards that we're experiencing during these trail clearing efforts is extremely unusual, and the clearing efforts, they require our full attention while we are actually clearing trees, and it requires a significant skill set that we've accumulated over years of work and education and knowledge gathering. And all of the staff involved in the trail clearing since May 26th have experienced close calls during trail clearing efforts. Close calls meaning trees breaking or trees snapping off and coming back at our staff in very dangerous situations. We'll go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to speak a little bit about our new Ganaraska forest mapping platform that we have. So all open trails are being added to the Ganaraska Forest interactive mapping platform. So the trails that you see on the map next to on the page right now, those are the ones that we currently have open for people to utilize. Closed trails within the Ganaraska Forest will not be represented on the map, only open trails will be. And the mapping will also indicate what areas of the forest where people can recreate. Areas that are temporarily closed will be identified on the mapping. Temporary closed for logging or whatever the situation might be will be identified on that mapping. And all of the open trails will be viewed in a real-time format. So this is an interactive map that your location will be displayed on that map as long as you're utilizing it on a device that you have access to internet or data. Next slide, please. So our cross-country ski and snowshoe trail system, staff anticipate the ski and snowshoe trail to be opened on a limited basis for 2023. As mentioned before, staff have cleared all ski and snowshoe trails up to the salvage logging areas in the Central Forest. That being stated, the Blue Trail will remain closed to facilitate logging efforts throughout the winter of 2023. And we have heavy equipment contractors that are addressing trail surface issues that have been left after trail clearing efforts. So they're in there removing stumps and other related issues that have occurred after storm clearing efforts. And the last point I have on this page is due to salvage logging efforts, staff anticipate challenges providing full access to the 2.5 kilometer snowshoe trail during the 2023 season. Staff will reassess hazards along the trail after logging is complete and prior to opening. Skip to the next slide, please. So I have an update on our partnerships. Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs is working with staff to ensure trail connectivity and safe passage for snowmobilers ahead of the 2023 season. OFSC volunteers are assisting staff with trail clearing efforts across the Ganaraska Forest snowmobile trail system. To support and connect user-friendly trail system, the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs, plan to use some alternative trail routes within the Ganaraska Forest proper. The GRCA and the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs are collaborating efforts and developing a trail system that meets the needs of future sustainable snowmobile use in the Ganaraska Forest. This plan may result in partner grant applications to achieve like-minded goals intended to benefit all forest users. In the Ontario, the snowmobile trail system will be available on the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs website, and that is the link there on that page. The next slide, please. Partnership agreements, staff have updated, and the GRCA is once again offering the trail maintenance agreement options for interested user groups. This was temporarily put on hold during the first portions of the cleanup as a result of the storm. Currently, staff are working towards developing several trail maintenance agreements where qualified user group members perform routine maintenance on predetermined trail sections. GRCA has developed a process in order to partner with qualified volunteers whom are working under staff supervision and assisting with minor trail clearing efforts. Go to the next slide, please. And so the single track redevelopment. Now that we've moved on to dual tracks, once the dual tracks have been cleared of all hazards, clearing efforts will be directed towards the single track trails. A single track plan is being developed by GRCA, which is intended to address single track trail network challenges and requirements. And under direct supervision from the GRCA, the trail maintenance agreement partners will take on a major role in implementing the single track redevelopment plan. We have been, yeah, and that's it for me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that is the end of our update presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pam. I presume there's going to be quite a few questions from board and so forth. So board members, questions for the staff?
Mr. Chair, for some reason, I think I'm going to be asking all the board members, for some reason, I think they're muted and I'm not sure if they can unmute. Can you unmute yourselves, board members? And I believe Joe has a couple of questions. He's on a phone.
Okay. I think Brian had a question from before. I know I have a couple of my own, so. Who do you want to start with then? Who would like to, Brian, do you want to go first or can you unmute yourself?
Yes, no, at this point, I don't have any further questions. I think the staff presentation was very fulsome, justified everything. I'm sure that there are some
okay,
agreements that can be reached with the user groups as we proceed. But at this time, I do not have any further questions. Thank you.
okay. Anyone else from the board have questions then? Nicole, yes?
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize for being late. So if this was already talked about, I could follow up with Linda. I'm glad to hear that volunteers are part of the cleanup effort as noted in the staff report. When I was speaking to some members over the past week, some folks mentioned that they had expressed an interest to volunteer or to use other qualified volunteers to help with the cleanup efforts. And I believe some of the feedback was volunteers weren't able to be used due to liability reasons. So could someone from staff elaborate or help me understand when we're saying volunteers are helping or part of the partnership helping with the cleanup efforts, who are these volunteers? Where they be recruited from? Is there a need for more volunteers? And is this a way for members to get involved and help cleaning up their beloved forest?
Okay, question, and I guess Pam or Ed, I think are probably the two that would answer this. Who would like to speak on it?
Well, I can start, and if Ed needs to jump in. So, sorry, Nicole, I don't know when you came, if you saw our full staff presentation or not, but so from volunteers, when volunteers are able to be used in the forest based on some of the criteria we mentioned in the presentation about safe access and right personal protective equipment and things like that. At that point, it depends on the task at hand. So we're engaging with some of our partner organizations and through the use of their volunteer groups, but again, under supervision of staff to do work in the forest. And at some point, I could see us also looking at engaging volunteers, kind of that larger public access. But Ed, did you want to elaborate a bit more on it?
Yes, so I'll reiterate here that the hazards that we're experiencing during trail clearing efforts are unusual. All of our staff have reported close calls. So it isn't a typical situation where volunteers could walk into a situation where they're not, where there isn't things situated to ensure that there's safety protection measures for all people involved.
Okay. Does that help answer your questions, Nicole, or you have anything further? No, you're muted, Nicole. Sorry. No. Okay, we'll go on to, I guess we can go on to Joe, if we can get Joe's questions. Do you have those, Linda, or is he coming on?
Joe is on a phone, Mr. Chair. He should be able to just speak, I would think.
Okay, Joe, if you'd like to ask your questions, please.
Because I have no control over the phones. I can't mute phones, and I'm not muting anybody. For some reason, the system is, but Joe, are you able to ask your question?
I don't even see him on the screen. Is he?
Yeah, I don't think he's on video. He called in.
Can I ask a question? I see it's coming up here by other people that are asking this question, and perhaps maybe we get some clarification. Ed, you mentioned that you've been using volunteers in the past and so forth. Can you mention whom those volunteers are? Because I see that's come up a number of times on the screen.
We had volunteers from Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, Northumberland County.
So maybe people that have a lot of experience then in this kind of work and so forth.
The Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs.
Okay. And you're going to be seeking some from some of the other clubs from here on in as need be, I guess.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Vicky, yes.
Thank you. It's not so much a question. I'm just curious. So I'm hearing a set of information from users, and I'm hearing other information from the board, and I'm reading comments that are coming up. And I'm just concerned about how this will come together collaboratively, because it still looks like there's two sides to this. And I'm just wondering what the strategy is to now work with everybody on this call and all these comments that are being made, so we actually get somewhere and we don't have two sides here, but we're coming together collaboratively with information, sharing information, and coming up with a solution. I just hope we don't walk away from this meeting still divided. So those are just my comments more than anything.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Nicole, you had your hand up?
I did, thank you. And again, if this was addressed earlier in the presentation, I do apologize. I wasn't a board member when the 2018 plan came out, and I understand how much work has to be done in clearing of the trails from the damage this past season. as a board member who's receiving this information from staff with, lots of respect, but then having that balancing act of concerns from members, I have to ask the question, how much level of engagement from our members and user groups are taken into consideration where we're making these significant changes to the forest that ultimately impact their enjoyment and access to the forest? So I'm obviously not the expert on how to clean up the forest and re-navigate some trails, but advocating on behalf of the members, at what point are they engaged and brought into the conversation, and how this could possibly have long-term perpetual impact on member access to the forest?
Who would like to answer that one? Pam, perhaps, or?
Yeah, again, I can start, and Ed and Gus can always jump in as well. So as stated in the presentation, many of the concerns and issues and opportunities are well known throughout the staff, the authority, and the user committee. I always like to say, especially when I've spoken to a lot of people and we've had meetings with the action group members, we are all on, at least I feel, we're all on the same page. We all want the same thing. We want recreational opportunities in the forest that protect the forest and are sustainable. And I know people don't like the word sustainable, but it's something that can be maintained into the future so that recreation is always part of the forest, and that the recreational activities is not a detriment to the ecology of the forest. So we're all there. The authority wants to engage with partners and work on this together. But at the same time, the staff and the authority have to work to moving some of these bigger issues forward so that the area that we can finally do our trail system in and enjoy is in a proper context to the rest of the area. And I guess, it's going to take the authority to work with our member municipalities to understand the relationship of trails to the right-of-ways. We want to acknowledge our neighbors that live directly next door to make sure that we hear their concerns and understand how the trail system may be negatively or positively impacting where they are. When I look at managing the forest or how it should be managed from recreation, it is this like kind of bullseye circle where we have the forest, we have our boundary neighbors, we have our concession road neighbors, regional, and it radiates from there all the way down to the United States border and the Quebec border. And from a management perspective, we have to think of all of those users equally. But understand everybody's concerns and address them at the same time. It is not an easy job, I can tell you that. There's a lot to consider. When it comes to engagement, again, staff used the really extensive consultation process from 2016 to inform some of the recommendations that are being looked at from an internal implementation. How we move forward, we're working with partner organizations and those memberships as they represent the different user groups to bring forward that consultation through the user group level. That is what the Recreational Users Committee is there for, to support, but it's equally how we are going to be partnering with the different user organizations that are out there too. Ed, Gus, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I'm not too sure if there is a whole lot that I can kind of add to that. When it comes to my stuff, I think the important thing is getting our loggers through so that we can have safe conditions to get volunteers in, because we want to engage people. We want people to come out and help. And my job, at least here in this recovery effort, is trying to push forward our guys with the machines to try and make this forest safe to have people in. Because again, we recognize it as a community forest, and we want to, I know for a fact that everyone wants to do best by it. So we're just trying to push that forward.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Oh, Margaret, yes. I can't even see it, Margaret.
Oh,
Sorry.
she says I have 2 questions in the chat.
Okay.
There's a lot of chat.
I asked you to unmute, Margaret. Can you not unmute, Mark? You
No.
should be able to. Okay.
I'm just looking for them here.
Oh, I can't.
Mark. Yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
Sorry about that. No, I forget what my questions were. Will all the questions that were asked in the 2 presentations be answered by staff at some point?
Linda, do you want to answer that? I mean,
I believe, yeah, the staff, we did discuss all the questions, and Pam, I believe you covered most of the questions in your presentations. Did you not? You and Gus and Ed?
we did our best. Not the way that questions were posed during some of the delegations were not clearly asked in the material we received beforehand. But so yes, we did do our best by looking at what was provided to answer some of that within the presentation.
I would say that if we haven't answered him tonight, we can always ask it at the next board meeting. I know that's another month away pretty much, but I think that's fair to staff on some of these questions. So.
And there seems to be some unclarity around off-road vehicles used on municipal roads. Can somebody clear that up for me?
Ed, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I can clear up a few misconceptions there. All the roads surrounding and within the boundaries of the Ganaraska Forest that are municipal roads do not authorize the use of off-road vehicles or dirt bikes. Neither City of Kawartha Lakes, Cavan-Monaghan, Port Hope, nor Clarington authorize the use of those particular vehicles on the roads surrounding or within the Ganaraska Forest. That includes, that includes green plated off-road vehicles is what I'm speaking of.
Okay, thanks for that. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Anyone
Mr.
else?
Chair, Joe may have, I believe Joe's on the phone, and I believe he can ask questions.
Okay, if Joe's
Been
there.
trying.
If Joe hasn't, I can ask a couple myself. So Joe?
And I know Tim Belch does have a question.
Okay, and Tim has questions, good.
I don't know what's going on with Joe's. Because there's Joe's phone shows that on my screen that it's unmuted.
Can Joe phone you directly, Linda? Can you arrange that? And maybe you can ask the questions for him.
Certainly.
In the meantime, we'll go to Tim.
Okay. Just to boil this down a bit, it sounds like that for the foreseeable future, until things are cleared in the way of sort of the timbered land forests, that there is not going to be a reopening of major parts of the Ganaraska until they get that done. And they're saying that they're trying to get that done by Christmas. So for those people that are sort of listening publicly, you know, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot happen until after Christmas. And then volunteers will be allowed to come in, because until then, there's too much in the way of possible hazards. And until that's taken care of, you're just not going to be, you know, from a liability standpoint, you're just going to be kept away from the forest for a little while longer. So I wanted that confirmed from the gentleman that spoke about the timber clearing and whatnot.
Yeah, so I can definitely confirm that. I mean, I don't want to put anyone in harm's way around Big Cody. It's just too dangerous. But that said, though, the loggers progress through the forest. So if there's areas that finish all activity and we can confirm that it's safe ahead of that Christmas deadline, we're going to aim to open it up and try and get that stuff cleaned up.
Very
on our
good.
own and with volunteers.
Yeah.
Like obviously Ed can speak more to
Sound-
that, but we're going to
sounds
try and
good.
open it progressively. That's the goal.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Were you able to get Joe's questions, Linda? You're muted.
I know, and I also have a broken arm, so I'm trying to do things with one hand and speak. Joe, did you want to tell me your questions and I can relay them? Okay, the concerns that Joe is hearing is that it seems that the concerns of the loggers are being preferred over the concerns of the users. The interest of the loggers is being preferred over the interests of the and the concerns of the users.
Okay, well, we'll let Gus answer that. I think it's been answered.
It's
tried to
pretty
answer it a few
clear.
times, but go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that it's not
Absolutely.
the concerns of the loggers, but it's more the
Right.
concerns of the health of the forest. Like I had mentioned, any trees that aren't cleaned up essentially become a big breeding ground. So unless we want more problems on our hands and more hazards on our hands, having these guys, giving them the right of way essentially to get through and get their work done is what ultimately is best for the health of the forest.
Okay, thank you. Did he have another
Just a
question?
minute, Joe, I've got to turn off my headset so I can listen through here and put you on speaker. Okay, there.
Okay, well, I've seen where they've done logging and left a real mess before. So I think it's a bit of an overstatement to say that, you know, they leave it in pristine condition. They take the logs and they leave a mess behind. So
Did you hear that, Gus?
I got a bit of echo
There
there,
is a
but
concern that the loggers, once they're finished, that they're leaving a mess behind. It's not in pristine condition.
yeah, well, the reality is there are big machines that are coming in there and it's not like they're doing stuff with handsaws. So there is going to be a bit of damage, but the trade-off is ultimately worth it. A lot of the machine activity is one of the main reasons why we're so successful at regenerating our forest. As the machines come in, the tracks and the wheels on them scarify the ground, and that helps create like ideal seed bed conditions for stuff like white pine and red oak. So we're kind of blessed in our regards that the logging activity is actually what allows the forest to regenerate, to grow babies underneath it. So we're not looking, we don't look for perfection when it comes to logging activities. And in fact, sometimes a little bit of imperfection is good in the ultimate long-term health of the forest.
Okay, thank you.
He may, just a minute, Joe may have one more. He's not done.
Are you saying that in the past, when they did logging, they left it in a nice, perfect condition? Like, because I've seen what they did. And so I think that's what I'm hearing from a lot of the users is you're overplaying this notion that, you know, that everybody has to be kept out of there while they're doing their operations. So.
I didn't catch the first part of that.
Sorry, Joe, I was dealing with something. You were saying that you've heard from loggers in the past that they're from users.
What I'm saying is just from my own observations, when loggers have been in there, I'm kind of agreeing with what the user is saying that, you know, it's not unusual. The loggers leave a mess in the past. So now everybody has to stay out of there while, you know, they're going to clean everything up. Well, it's taking way too long.
Well, the loggers have never been the ones who clean up the mess. So what we normally do in our thinning operations is prior to these guys cutting, I go out and I walk all the single track that's in the block that's being cut. And I put up pink flagging tape for them so that they're able to see it. And then that helps them avoid covering stuff with slash and debris or running it over or dropping trees on it. Now, like I said, they're dealing with big machines, so it's not going to be perfect. There's obviously going to be some small damage that comes in, but afterwards, after they're done, that's where I will come in after, try to throw stuff off. And yeah, I mean, in the long term, we're trying to work here towards getting an agreement so that we can kind of perfect this to get this up to the standard that people need. Because yeah, I'm sure once logging is done, that's not the most ideal riding conditions. We try to make it as best as we can, given the resources that we got, and we're trying to do better.
Well, okay, so I saw it myself last year. The Blue Trail was basically closed all year, so now it's closed again. So did they finish in there or last year or not?
Nope, they weren't able to get in because of the snowfall, so we had to postpone that, and that's why it's held off until this year.
So let me ask you a different question. The one in the presentation, there was a picture of a fairly small tree laying across the trail. So is that still sitting there? Like, has staff ever removed any of those sort of smaller trees?
So I can speak to that picture because I believe it's the one that has some signage in behind. That picture is actually right behind the Forest Center here off the 10th line. It represents a trail closure that occurred, I think, 2 years ago now, because we were reconfiguring that area for putting in our beginners cross-country ski trail. So what that picture shows is a trail access closure off the 10th that was purposely put in to support the development of a different trail. And we used a snow fence, and then we pile brush in front of it to slowly restore back this this boundary off of the 10th line and make that division between the municipal right-of-way and our own property. So in that particular picture that we're inquiring about, and I do remember you asking that question, sorry, Joe, from the delegation, that particular picture, no, because that is not the intent to be removed.
So one of the questions was about why the access points are closed. So in other words, can you explain that?
So I can start, and I'll maybe ask answer it in a way a little bit with Tim's question about when will trails open. There is requirements that have to be met to open trails, and we will open trails in a process. It's not all at once, it's not all or nothing. So when the loggers have moved out of that area, because remember, we have sold these areas to the loggers. This becomes their work site. It is no longer in our control in that sense. So similar to a construction site, people don't walk freely through a construction site. So we have to support our loggers in closing down where they're working and the best we can in a forest situation. So once the loggers move out of the area, then we assess that trail for hazards that maybe have left behind, because as Gus said, the machines are big and they do stir things up. So we go back through and we'll check it and make further refinements to it. And then when that trail system can start and stop from an access point, which at this point is a parking lot, then we will open that trail system. So as an example, in the West Forest, where you see how those trails are open and they all are connecting, we aren't sending users up to a dead end. So that's kind of the criteria we're using right now as a result of all the different operation locations of the salvage and harvest operations. So specific to access points. So why are we closing various access points that are coming from both municipal right-of-ways and from some of our parking lots? This is something that staff are working on right now through consultation with the member municipalities that border the forest, to say you have some right-of-ways that allow or do not allow certain uses. So we don't want to send our users down a trail that legally, by municipal bylaws and rules, they're not allowed to be on. We are doing this so that users are not being set up for failure when they maybe accidentally leave our property or intentionally leave our property, and they're not supposed to be off-road using an off-road vehicle or a dirt bike. So this is something that we are still working with our member municipalities. And that is why between the situation with the logging and the situations with municipal right-of-way rules that we have prevented access through all the, Ed can correct me, I think we have over 125 access points into the forest. And I would also like to state that the public consultation that occurred in 2016, there was comments about that there was too many access points into the forest. So this is something we do have to get a handle on for everybody's benefit.
So there was a question about why is the central forest closed for logging right now?
Mm-hmm.
With no logging going on.
So I can do this one. I guess you can jump in. Again, it goes back to our rules of how we're opening trail systems. So right now, the two access points into the forest, the central forest, is from the Ganaraska Forest Center parking lot and the horse trailer parking lot, which is just a little bit further up from there. All of the trails loop back to these two access points. So as based on the same criteria, when the loggers move along the way, we're able to restore those loops back, starting and ending from those parking lots. Then we will open those trail systems. Our hope, Gus said that by Christmas, we'll be pretty much out of the central forest, except for some of the Blue Trail area. We're hopeful that, we can slowly open up sections of the loop trails. The reason why typical access points are used to in the more in the east side of the central forest is, again, we are right now pausing the use of these other access points off municipal right-of-ways until we understand what users could come in off of them and understand if they're appropriate for accessing the forest as it is, because it's not a formal access point that everybody who comes from all over driving can necessarily access. Right, Ed or Gus, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, just to expand on the logging operation strictly, I mean, in theory, the activity was going to be going on right now if it wasn't for breakdowns. So we've got loggers coming in or making their way literally in that direction as of Monday. Given the nature of salvage, it's really difficult to reliably forecast how long it's going to take people to get in there and proceed through. We have to err on the safe side, and that's pretty much it. But activity is going to be starting up in there in literally the next couple weeks.
One of the concerns expressed was, with the short extension of these membership plans. So can you address that, please?
Well, again, the extension on memberships is a year from the original expiry date. So everybody's getting it. People who purchase memberships between June 1st, 2021 and the day of the storm, everybody is getting a 1-year extension free on their membership. So is that short? It's a 1-year additional membership that is free. Yes, I understand, and the authority understands that based on the use that you're in there using, you're then it's influenced by the season that you're able to do that use in. If that's short,
and they also can get a refund, Pam, I think was also mentioned.
Yeah. And I am just on that note, I see people saying I've not received my extension. If you are a member and you feel that you've not received your extension, please look at your spam, your junk folders, everywhere where emails go these days, especially if it's Gmail. And if you've not, please contact the main office and they will help you or see on our system. It's just call and ask and we will see where it is on the system.
Well, I guess I'll just sort of wrap up by saying I kind of agree that the logging is taking precedence over the users. So that's just my standpoint on it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone with further questions? I'm just going to ask, I have a couple of my own if I could quickly. The
It's a
Greenbelt
damn
monies,
forest.
the Greenbelt monies, could someone say where that money's being spent or how it's being spent?
Yeah, see you, Mr. Chair. So the authority applied for this grant at the end of my years are all mixed up now. Towards the end of 2021 and into 22, we applied for this grant. So before the storm, and we originally applied for it to install signage throughout the forest and a couple of conservation areas over it's a 2-year grant. We were just beginning to kind of get started on the project when the storm hit, and then of course that paused. And shortly after the storm, I contacted the Greenbelt Foundation saying, so this has just happened. Signage might not be our biggest focus right at this moment. So they were able to work with us within the criteria of the grant that we had to meet all the original criteria. So there still is a component of signage that will be occurring next year. We were able to kind of split it in half, and the other funds have been approved for reuse. We have been able to extend contract staff longer in the season to provide extra staff support. And Ed made reference to heavy equipment being used to go in after some of the salvaging areas on the trails to do the stump removals and stuff like that. It is going towards that.
Thank you.
And it was all approved.
And I guess my other question is the length of the trails that are there now, are they being reduced at all, or are they going to remain much the same as they are today?
And I don't know if you want to speak to that.
It refers to more of what Peter Swinton had brought forward and the single trails and so forth.
So I can speak on that. The amount of trail system that's within this Ganaraska forest is in question. Much of the trail system leads people into unauthorized areas or onto private lands or onto unmaintained municipal roads or onto municipal roads proper. All of those trail networks will be rerouted to ensure that the users will stay solely on Ganaraska property. So ultimately, the trail network will change, and it's to facilitate the use of all different user types. I predict that over the coming years that there will be several changes, several adaptations to allow for all users to utilize the property in a more efficient way. And so that's something that we'll be working directly with our user groups that are represented on the RUC to ascertain what their user groups want from this property. So that trail system, like right now, we don't know exactly what it'll look like, except for those few major points that I just stipulated, how trails are leading off the property onto private land or onto municipally controlled roadways.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the board have further questions at this point? Don't see any. So can I have a motion then to receive the staff report as presented then, please? Tim, seconder, please. Brian, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Question?
Oh, Mr. Chair, question.
Question from who?
Joe.
We've already passed the motion and we've moved on. So I mean,
I was trying to ask the question before you called the vote. You took 10 seconds to call the vote.
Okay, go ahead.
So one of the points was, what's the revenue from logging like in 2021 versus the membership revenue?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'm saying before the storm.
I don't have that in front of me.
So one of the comments in the chat was that the membership revenue is like some $1,000 worth of logging revenue is a fraction of that. So is that accurate or?
I want to say the membership revenue in 2021 may have been 300,000. It may have been well, 2021. Now it was probably less than that because we were forced to close the forest. I mean, everything shut down, right? When COVID hit, just everything shut down.
I'm talking like a normal year.
A normal year, if we were looking at a normal year, because obviously 2023 won't be a normal year, we would be looking at roughly 290,000 to 300,000 in membership.
What comes in from logging?
I think logging around 250 to 300. Now we have been higher, and in the future it's anticipated we're probably going to be 200,000.
So, and we're getting no revenue from this clearing, I take it?
No, and in fact, we'll lose the money.
Why don't they just cut why don't they just open the trails and
I can't answer. I'm not an expert in that. That would be Joe, or sorry, that would be Gus or Ed. I'm not sure.
Could you just clarify what he said at the tail end there, Linda?
I think he's just said, why don't they just open the trails then?
I'm not in good conscience saying it's safe for people to go in areas with active logging, because I don't believe that is safe.
Maybe I didn't phrase it quite like, why not just get them to move the trees and like get them off the trails, as opposed to shutting everything down and giving them 2 years to sort of harvest the timber for nothing, that's all. I don't see the point of it, but to me, this is a long-standing issue where the loggers, again, I remember running into a logger a couple of years ago, and he was telling me how much money they were making out of the Ganaraska forest. So this isn't a new thing with me. This is a long-standing issue where I think they've been given sort of preferential treatment for a lot of years, and now it's just carrying on to the detriment of the users of the forest. So I'm sorry, but I don't agree with the staff's approach on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comment, Joe. So we've had a mover, we've had a seconder, we've had all in favor. So we'll move on to our next area, which will be our budget, preliminary budget. So first of all, I'd like to thank all those that did participate in tonight's discussion, and those that are here from the public and that heard the staff reports, and we've all heard your concerns, and we're not taking them lightly, nor staff. Staff, I'm sure, will go back and rethink some things themselves, and hopefully, they'll come up with some further thoughts and ideas and try and move as quickly as possible. So, Vicky, you have something you want to say? Yes.
I just wanted to ask, with your statement there, what is the next steps? There was a lot of questions asked. There's a lot of things that are being asked to reconsider or maybe modify. So when would we hear back on all of that? Obviously, it would be a new board at that time, yes. But when can these users expect to hear more information?
Linda, would I turn that over to you to answer, or?
Mr. Chair, I would think that staff will be working on, we're doing an update every month at the monthly meetings.
You're muted, Linda.
Sorry. That was my arm. I would think that staff would be, as I said, we're doing monthly updates for the board on the status of the forest. And so I would think that the next monthly update will include any of the considerations that staff, because those presentations are being referred back to staff. And I would think that that would be brought forward at the next board meeting, which is probably November or December, or both, because every meeting there will be an update. If any other staff, Pam, if you want to, I don't know if you have anything, or Gus on that, or Ed.
Pam, you have something?
Yes, so following Linda, we will continue to provide updates. We will always continue to communicate to those who are interested through our websites and through press releases and Facebook. All I can say is we do hear the user community. We will be revisiting things, and we'll be continuing to work on what we need to do, which is to clear trails, cut trees, open the trails when we can, and continue conversations with member municipalities and our partners so that we can keep moving forward.
Okay, so we'll move on then. Nicole, quickly comment, because we're kind of, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I don't know why it's doing that.
Thank you, Chair. I missed the chance to ask with unmuting. So we don't sit at the user group meetings. I think it'd be beneficial for us to sit in on them. How are the user group meetings set up? Is it in a town hall format? Like, how are individual members heard and collected? And a second question is there an opportunity for the board to be led through a walkabout of some of these areas so that we can fully understand what the plan in action, but also understand what the members are seeing and some of the barriers to their access. So how is member input being heard at these rec user groups? And is there an opportunity for an organized board walkabout in some of the affected areas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Tracy Richardson, I don't know where she went on the meeting. She was here. She is the board rep on the Recreational Users Committee. And so she does sit in on all those meetings. And certainly there is, I know the chair has been out a few times. There is certainly a chance for the board to definitely go out in the forest. So that can definitely be arranged through staff. So staff can will be in touch through Pam, and it can be arranged. Most definitely. We always encourage the board to come out.
Mark is muted.
Oh, how did he get muted? I asked Vicky to unmute too.
Thank you, Linda. Vicky, one last comment, and then we're going to move on. Go ahead, Vicky, you're muted. But...
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to Nicole's point, I would like to see some of these access points. I understand the respect for municipal bylaws and accessing with certain equipment and so on where it's not, or parking on municipal roads where it's problematic, but some foot traffic coming from municipal roads. I have nothing, this discussion, I don't have visibility to these access points. So it would be nice to know where these access points are. And from a municipal perspective, is it truly problematic? If it is, then that's great. But if it's really limiting the people who live there and it's not a problem from a municipal perspective, I would like to have that consideration and like to know where those are. So.
Okay. I guess, one solution would be perhaps the board itself could meet with staff if this board wishes, because we are in power until a new board is formed. If you wish to go forward and meet with staff and have a more in-depth discussion with them one-on-one at the Forest Center, perhaps with a tour, that could be arranged if that's the wish of the board. I know it's an election time, and I know it's, who knows what the turnouts are going to be, but end result is that can happen, and perhaps that would make decision-making a lot easier for the board members, or we could simply wait till the new representatives are put on the board, or if there is new representatives. So that's food for thought, and we could either leave it like that, or we could go forward. If somebody wants to go forward with that, we can by all means do that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can certainly send an email out to the board. I will not be, I would not be attending that tour. As I said, I'm just, my physical ability, I'm not able to.
We don't need you to break your other arm out there.
Thank you. And I don't want to do that. But we can certainly arrange that during a day or on a weekend. I know that staff would make themselves available.
Yes, and then we want to do it all. If we're going to do that, we want to do it as a group. I mean, there's no sense.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That would be the preferred.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so we'll leave it like that then. Linda will send an email out, and if you wish to attend, then we'll go forward. If not, if we don't get at least 50% of the board there, then we'll leave it for the next board or the next board meeting to decide where we go from here. Okay, so next up we have our new business or other business arising from the minutes. We have the 2023 preliminary budget and the municipal levy and the staff reports attached. Can I have a mover that this be forwarded to our member municipalities and brought back, I believe, in December? Tim, you'll move?
Yeah.
Yeah, a seconder? Seconder, please. Greg. Any questions? Questions on this? There being none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we have applications that are under the Ontario Regulation 168-06, and we need the permits to be approved they were approved by the executive, but now to be approved by the board. Can I have that? Can I have a mover to do that, please? Margaret, seconder Brian. Any questions on any of those permits? There being none, all in favor? That's carried. And next up, we have new business dealing with the electronic monitoring policy, and there was a staff report attached. Linda, do you wish to speak on this at all before we put it to a vote?
I think the staff report speaks on to it that we are required to do this. We were required to do this by October 11th. If we had 25 employees, we've just reached that 25 mark, and so we are required to do this, and it's a straightforward policy that's to be included in the employment. Joe, you're still on my phone, aren't you? Joe wrote down he has a couple of questions, but do you want to speak to the board? Joe, are you still on this phone?
Well, we're on the, is it on the electronic monitoring policy? Because that's where we are.
No, it's not. I'll try and contact Joe tomorrow, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We've been moved. Can I have a mover there?
No, it has not moved and seconded on the electronic policy.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for this one, please. The electronic monitoring policy. Greg, you'll move. Seconder, please. Tim?
Yep.
And there's no comments or questions, so all in favor? And that's carried. And next we have an in-camera issue. It's dealing with a personnel matter, and it's an unidentifiable person, which we'd like to. So Linda, you're going to have to clear everyone off. And
yes, I will do that. I would ask people if they could just please disconnect from the Zoom, but I will go through the participants. But the board we need a motion to go in camera, and then I will clear everybody if people have not left.
Motion to go in camera, please. Vicky, seconded by Tim. And we'll go all in favor. Does anyone want a break before we go actually into the in-camera? It's been.
That probably would be a great idea.
Oh, Joe, I can hear you.
Okay.
but you didn't ask the question. I guess you can.
Can I not ask them now?
Of me, or it's up to the chair.
We're in camera, Linda, so.
There's a bit of a time to ask some questions out of it, that's all. Right? So my question was there it looks to me like there was a large surplus from last year. Is that true?
No, there is no surplus from last year. From this year, from 2022? No, because if it shows a surplus, it means
Linda,
we're not
before,
getting-
while you're answering Joe's questions, the rest of us are going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, and I've got to
So we'll
get.
start
I
back
have
at 9.
to
We'll
clear
start
the
back at
room.
9:30, so you can answer Joe's questions.
Okay, and I also have to clear this room.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's pee break time.
Okay, Joe, I just gotta,
Sure, okay.
I'm trying to remove without removing the wrong people. Can I ask members of the public who are on this call now to leave? I am going to remove, but it's a lot easier if you people could. I appreciate everybody being here. Okay, I don't know what that is. Who is Ian? People are just not. I have to remove people so the board can go in camera. It would just be, I've still got about 10 people on here that are not removing themselves. Staff, I need you to remove yourselves as well because you will not be in the in-camera. So thanks, Ken. Oops. Gee, Mark, I nearly removed you. Sorry. Nearly there, people. I'm still removing people, Mr. Chair, so
That's okay. Take your time.
they have not removed themselves. Okay, I have in here Linda, Mark, Tim, Brian, Bruce, Greg, Joe, Marg, Nicole, and Vicky. So I think we're good. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll talk, Joe, your question was, is there going to be a surplus? Is that what you were asking? Joe?
I think I understand now. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, if we may not have gotten the revenues or anything. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are we ready to go back? Are the rest? I see there's still
A minute, I
black
have to pause the recording, Mr. Chair, too.
Oh, sorry. Business from our in-camera session. Can I have a motion then, please?
You want me
Linda,
to read the motion?
do you want to read the motion and we'll get a mover in a second, or how's that?
The motion as it reads is that the Board of Directors of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority acknowledges that the staff has a difficult job and recognizes that the staff are professionals in their field and that the staff have the full support of the board. And further that the board of directors of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority will not tolerate harassment and or bullying towards staff as they carry out their responsibilities.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Mover for that one, please. Brian, seconder. Vicky, all in favor? It's passed unanimously. And motion to adjourn, and it is a little
10.
after 10. Brian, you'll move, seconder. Vicky, and we are now adjourned. Good luck, everyone, on your campaigns and your elections. So